Welcome. I'm Raoul Contreras. This is a very special American politics report of the Contreras Report. Why? Because we have a guest, Ruben Navarrette. Ruben is a columnist and writer for the Washington Post Writers Group. In the past, he's worked for CNN, the San Diego Union, the Arizona Republic, and the Dallas Morning News. He currently also writes for the Daily Beast. Ruben is involved in a lot of issues. He is involved, because he does 2 columns a week, he is involved in probably more issues than I am. And I'm involved in issues 24 hours a day. So Ruben, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, Raoul, there's an interesting thing shaping up, for parents who want to send their kids back to school. We're going through something called mask confusion. And that is a difference of opinion nationally on masking policy, and whether students and teachers should be going through the school day with a mask or without a mask. And what's happened here is at least 10 states, blue states, Democratic run states like New York, California, Washington State, and others have passed laws saying that if you go to public schools in those states in the next couple of weeks, you're going to have to wear a mask. And on the other side of the fence, you have another 10 states, red states like Arizona, Texas, and Florida, for instance, that have said the opposite. Those governors are telling the school districts underneath them that you may not require masking. So that's 20 states out of the 50 that have taken a position. The other 30 have not. But it's been very confusing, I think, for parents who are not quite sure, depending on what state they live in, whether it's safe to send their students to school.
Well, if the philosophy that generally is held by people like me and you, I presume, is that the closer to people the government is a better form of government. So,
right.
What about the local school districts? Now, if they're not prohibited by state law to issue mask orders, if they do, should the parents be relieved that they don't have to make that decision for themselves?
That's one way, certainly, of looking at politically. We've been in a strange place for the last 10 to 20 years where the political parties act out of character. People go around saying they're conservative Republican, and then it turns out they believe in things that are not very conservative and not very Republican. And this is one of those cases, because you're right. The traditional Republican view has been local control of our schools, that the schools and these decisions should be made, public safety protocol and the like, student safety protocol at the local level. But what's happening with a state like Florida, for instance, is Governor DeSantis, a Republican, the governor there, has basically said that the school districts do not have local control, that it should really be made, that policy should be made at the state capitol in Tallahassee. And so that's become curious, because all of a sudden, if you're a Republican, what happened to being in favor of local control? Turns out not so much.
Yeah, and I think that parents should pay very careful attention to that. Now, another problem in this particular area is the private schools. Private schools aren't governed by the state government as far as masks are concerned. So you may have a local school district like yours that has a masking policy, but the private school right down the street doesn't require masks. And so what happens when these kids, are playing together, for example, or attending something together? Why all the confusion, Ruben? Why are we so confused in how we're dealing with this pandemic? It's not the first time we've had one.
I think we're confused because we've let politics become the driving force. I think that Republicans think that the way to make headway against the Democratic administration of Joe Biden is to go after masking and vaccinations. These are really the wrong things, I think, to be fighting against, but this is where they've decided to go. And basically the pro-mask party are the Democrats, the anti-mask party are the Republicans. And that's one of the reasons it's gotten so confusing. In between private schools and public school is a hybrid called charter schools. Charter schools are run from public tax dollars with an independent contractor charter between the school and the state, less regulation. So it's a bit of a hybrid. And I think if you are a parent who sends your kid to a charter school, you are in a bit of confusion, because you want the flexibility that comes with a private school education, but you're living on public tax dollars. So if the state of California decides to rein that in and say, well, we're paying for these schools, you're going to play by our rules, then you end up with a real legal problem.
Before we sign off, which we're not going to do in the next few seconds, but before we sign off, I want you to think about this. I will change the subject because in
Sure.
New York State, where neither you nor I have ever lived, there is a real problem developing there with the
Yes.
governor. So think about that for a minute. So let's finish up this school thing. All right. So you have in San Diego, for example, which I believe is the fifth largest school district in the country. You have them ordering masks, and they start school either at the end of August or beginning of September, right after
That's
Labor
right.
Day. And most of the schools around, including yours, do your children go to the school in Carlsbad?
They go to a charter school in Escondido, but likewise, as you say, the public schools are starting in the next 2 weeks. So by Labor Day, typically the school will have already started. They'll be a week into it across the state.
Now, another issue here is at the college level, you'll notice, I'm sure you've noticed that a lot of the colleges, particularly private colleges, are issuing ultimatums, vaccinate or don't show up. And,
Right.
And that includes a lot of public schools. San Diego State, for example, my alma
Right.
mater, and UCSD, UC Berkeley, and other UCs around the state have issued orders that vaccinate or don't show up. What do you think of that?
I think that's fair. I think that public schools, public colleges and universities, public employees, firefighters, police officers, anybody who's military, anybody who's on the public dole, I think, and takes a public paycheck, they should be required to vaccinate. I've seen reports, Raoul, that says police officers, if they're forced to vaccinate, will quit. They'll retire rather than be forced to get a shot. I think that's a concern. It should be a concern for all of us. If you're on the public payroll, you're going to one day enjoy a public pension paid for by people like me through my tax dollars, then right now you better get vaccinated.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think this resistance against vaccinations is really astounding to me. I have never seen it in my lifetime. There have been instances in my lifetime where I have heard of or observed instances, for example, when my stepfather was a rookie San Diego police officer, there was a car accident, several cars involved, and one car had a family in it, and the children were seriously injured, and the emergency techs showed up, and they needed to stop the bleeding, and because there was so much bloodshed, they had to put blood into, transfuse some blood into one of the children. Otherwise, he was going to die within minutes.
Right.
And the parents refused because they were Jehovah's Witnesses and it was against their religion.
Right.
Rookie stepfather, less than a year on the job, got between him and the parents, got between the technicians, the emergency crew, and the parents, and just said, "I order that that the transfusion occur." And the father was griping and moaning and screaming that he was going to sue and all that. Never mind that the kid was going to die.
Right.
And so
right.
I learned I was
well, as well.
9 or 10 at the time when I heard that story.
Yes.
And I've stuck by it ever since.
You were a Marine, and you know that one of the things that happens, your body is no longer your own. It belongs to the United States government. And that's true. And you will get vaccinated, and you will, we're going to pay for all your medical care while you're in the service and beyond. And in return, you're going to go along by these rules. And I think that is fair. I think that public employee unions, public employees and military and others can be mandated to get vaccinated. I'm with you. I don't understand the hesitation about vaccinations. Ironically, there's a reputation that Latinos don't want to get vaccinated. It turns out Latinos are oftentimes getting vaccinated at a higher rate than the general population, which is only at 50%. Farm workers in the San Joaquin Valley, 75% of them are vaccinated thanks to some private effort. So we do have the vaccination effort a little upside down, and that issue's been a little confusing for folks.
Right. Okay, let's switch to New York. Governor Andrew Cuomo has been accused by a number of women of sexual harassment, and the Attorney General of New York issued a report that was investigated. Something like 170 people were interviewed, And I guess there were 11 separate women that made accusations, and the guy is in real serious trouble. What do you think of that situation?
Yes, he's in real serious trouble, Andrew Cuomo, as the governor of New York, because Democrats have turned against him. Everybody in New York, like California, they're all Democrats. It was a Democratic attorney general who wrote this report. There were members of her staff apparently were intimidated and threatened by some of the governor's staff. This is Democrat versus Democrat. There's not a Republican anywhere to be found. So the party has definitely turned on Andrew Cuomo, starting with President Biden, who likewise has said the governor should resign. It doesn't seem like he wants to resign. He's dug in, but it just gets worse and worse the longer he stays in. It's become a problem also for Chris Cuomo over at CNN, his brother, because he can't cover the story, and CNN can't be seen as objective in not covering the story. So it's problematic all the way around. It's a terrible scandal for the Democrats.
No, it really is, and I actually will expect Cuomo to resign within the next 10 days or so. He's got until this Friday. Today is Monday. He has until this Friday to produce evidence for an impeachment committee of the state legislature. I guess the assembly there, the lower house. And then they will proceed with, they say they'll proceed with impeachment. And everybody from Biden through Nancy Pelosi and the U.S. Senators, Schumer and Gillibrand of New York, like you say, they're all Democrats, and they're all for his resigning from office. So we'll see what happens. Ruben Navarrette, thank you for being there again, and we appreciate your visit, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Those of you out there. And if you get a chance, subscribe to this channel so you will be notified whenever we post a Contreras report. Again, thank you for being there. We'll see you next time.